guys, today's video is going to be a continuation of the series. I don't even want to say series because it's basically going to be two parts because that's all I can really make out of this, but basically today we're going to be talking about eyeshadow palettes that I bought just because I'm on YouTube. The previous video that I did was eyeshadow palettes I would have bought if I wasn't on YouTube. I will have that linked up in the corner, but today we are going to be talking about the palettes that I bought just because I'm on YouTube. Maybe not just because. I do make sure that the palettes that I do buy are palettes that I actually like the color stories of, but I do think that I would have talked myself out of buying these palettes if I were not on YouTube. So let's go ahead and start. I'm going to put up pictures on the screen because I don't have all of these palettes currently in my collection because I have decluttered some of them and I'm just lazy and I don't feel like going to get them. Now, the first palette on my list is a palette that I saw at IMATS last January. So I went to IMATS in LA, and the palette that I'm talking about is the Francesca Tollett and Ofra collab palette. The only reason why I really bought this palette is because it was available at IMATS before it was available for sale anywhere else. So I knew that if I bought that palette, I could be the first one to make a video with it, I could be the first one to review it, and it would probably get a lot of views. So that's why I ended up buying it. I did think that the color story in it was fine, like it's totally something that I would have used, but that palette ended up being so bad that I don't even have it in my collection anymore. Like, it was terrible. I don't know how some people like that palette, but I just don't think that I'm a fan of the Ofra eyeshadow formula. Now, that is the only palette that I've tried from them. It's the only eyeshadows that I know that they really have. I don't even really know anything about their eyeshadows. Do they even make eyeshadows anymore? I don't even know. I think they just came out with a new palette that was like an all shimmer palette that nobody asked for, but I could be alone. Let's move on. Let's see, what is the next one that I bought just because of YouTube? So next one on my list here is the Riviera palette by ABH. The reason why I bought this was because I did not have any other ABH palettes that I had reviewed on my channel. So I just wanted to see kind of how hyped up like the reviews would be if I did end up buying it, and also it was like their most colorful palette, so you know, I did think that it would definitely fit my aesthetic, and I think that the people who watched my video were probably people who were into color just like me as well. Like, that's one of the reasons why I don't like to review neutral palettes, just because I don't want neutral loving people to come to my channel and then see me do something neutral and expect me to keep doing that because that's why they came to me. Do you know? Like, I just don't want that. Like, I would rather people find me for my colorful stuff and stick around and know what they're getting. So yeah, that palette, I wasn't really a huge fan, and to be honest, like, those videos, I should say, I also made a 10 look video with that palette expecting it to do really good, and it just didn't. And I just think that it's because the people, or how do I say this? It's because the people that ABH market to is not really the people who do the kind of makeup that I do. So I just don't feel like I'm the right person to be reviewing ABH because I'm just not the aesthetic of the brand. Like, I hope that, like, in my head that makes sense. So I just don't think that I'm going to be buying more ABH palettes moving forward because, number one, they don't really do good on my channel. Number two, they don't really have my favorite formula. Number three, I just don't really care about ABH. But if they want to put me on their PR list, I'm not going to say no. I'm just putting that out there. Next palette that I bought just because I am on YouTube is the Juvia's Place Coral palette. This is a very neutral palette, and I am just kind of a Juvia's Place fanatic, and I will talk myself into buying most Juvia's Place palettes. I've skipped on maybe like 2 or 3, I think, of the new ones that have like been released. I did not buy was it the Warrior palette, the neutral palette? I also didn't buy the Nomad, I think it was called. None of those really spoke to me, but I did end up getting the Coral palette, which I honestly didn't really like that palette. I didn't feel like the quality was on par with what Juvia's Place usually comes out with. So on top of the color story being kind of boring, it also just wasn't that great of quality. Maybe I'm alone, maybe I'm the only one who feels that way, but I just wasn't really impressed by that palette. It could also be because the color story just didn't really inspire me and I found it to be kind of boring, and maybe that kind of pulled down my opinion on the palette as well. That's another reason why I try to, for the most part, stick to buying palettes that I know I'm excited about, because that is just going to make me come across like more excited on camera, and when I am more excited about something, I feel like it's more interesting for you guys to watch. So I definitely try to not force myself to buy something just for review purposes, but it needs to be stuff that I'm like intrigued by at the same time as well. Next up on my list, I have the Jaclyn Hill Vault palettes. I only ended up getting 2 of these. This was like right after I had started my channel, so my videos on them didn't necessarily get a lot of views, and I also wasn't like the first one to review it or anything like that, but I still wanted to make videos with them, and I was one of those people who ended up getting 1 palette from the good batch and 1 palette from the bad batch, because I ended up buying them from 2 different places. So I bought 1 at Ulta and 1 at the Morphe store. And I definitely agree with people saying that there's good and bad palettes, because I mean, I experienced this myself, and I feel like if you're the kind of person who just bought like the whole vault at one place, you won't know if there's good and bad batches because you've only tried 1 batch, you know? And I definitely feel like people aren't lying when they say that. It's not that some people just suck at eyeshadow. Like, honestly, was it the Armed and Gorgeous palette? It was the worst palette that I think I have tried in such a long time. Like, it was terrible. I've decluttered that one. I've kept my Dark Magic palette. I don't know if I'll ever dip into it again, but I do think that the color story in it is really nice. And I also enjoyed working with it when I did. But those were palettes that, color story wise, I wasn't like blown away, but they were the color stories out of the vault that interested me the most. So that is why I ended up buying those 2 palettes. Do I regret it? Not necessarily. I mean, like I said, my videos didn't do the best, so money-wise, I didn't really get anything in return. I also wasn't monetized back then, so I wasn't expecting to, but I don't really think that I'm going to ever use the 1 palette that I have in my collection again. Maybe I will pull it into some kind of a using very old products that I need to dust off kind of video or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I'll find a way to pull that palette into a video just for fun. Like, maybe that could be kind of cool. Next up on my list is a palette that I like this palette, but I just don't think I would buy it if I wasn't on YouTube. And this is the Juvia's Place and Fumi collab. This was the kind of face eye palette that they had, as well as the lip glosses. I ended up buying the whole collection that had like a makeup bag in it and stuff too, just because I wanted to make a video with the entire collection and showcase everything. The palette ended up being good. Like, I'm not mad that I have that in my collection, and some of those shades actually work really well as face products on my skin tone, which is awesome. But I also just don't really ever reach for face palettes, so I never really get any use out of that one because I have other individual face products that I like more than the shades in that palette. So did I waste my money on that? I wouldn't say necessarily. I mean, I didn't get all the money back with the video that I did make, but the video definitely did good, so I don't think that I regret buying that, and I still think that it's a good product, you know? It's not something I'm mad that I have in my collection, but I don't really see myself ever reaching for that when I have other things that I like more that I can reach for instead. Now, the next thing on my list is something that I feel like a lot of people might be a little bit upset about, and these are all of the Juvia's Place monochromatic palettes. ColourPop, you idiot. Except for the Smoke Show. Like, my collection is big, okay? Like, let's pretend I didn't have a channel. How I would do my makeup if I didn't have a channel is that I would just pull from different palettes, you know? Like, I would never just use 1 palette. So for me, I wouldn't need any of the did I say Juvia's Place in the beginning? The ColourPop. The ColourPop monochromatic palettes, I wouldn't need any of those because I already have all of those colors like within my palettes and within my singles. So for me, it wouldn't make any sense to buy something like that since I already have it. But since I'm on YouTube, and because those palettes are only $12 and those videos also do really good on my channel, and I always get my money back from like what I spent on the palette itself, for me it's worth reviewing. And I also just think that they are super fun. They're really cute. I really enjoy those palettes, but like I said, it's not something that I would have needed if I wasn't on YouTube. And if I wasn't on YouTube, my collection would be so much more curated, and I would probably not even buy palettes anymore. If I'm being honest, I would probably just buy singles because of how many eyeshadow palettes I currently own. That's probably a lie, and I would probably still buy eyeshadow palettes, but in my head, like, that's kind of how I'm thinking right now. Like, to me, that's what makes sense if I didn't have a channel and I would just try to kind of fill gaps in my collection instead. I would probably focus more on unique things from indie brands and stuff over eyeshadow palettes, but I don't know, it's just fun for me to review ColourPop. I really enjoy most of their products, and like I said, I just think that they are really cute, and it's something that's fun to get in the mail. It's something that's fun to unbox. They're cheap. They usually ship pretty fast. I always have a good experience with them, so that's why I basically have most of the ColourPop monochromatic palettes, and I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't be mad if I was on ColourPop's PR list, so like, I feel like I need to feature some ColourPop products for that to happen, you know? So if you want to help me out, I don't know if you can even do anything to help me out, but I would love to get on Colourpop's PR list at some point, I'm just saying. So next up on my list, do you remember in the other video that I did, if you watched that, I was talking about how there was a lot of Morphe palettes that I would have bought if I wasn't on YouTube, just because of the size of the palettes and because they're so big, and I just don't like reviewing big palettes. But here's a Morphe palette that I did buy just because I am on YouTube, and this is the Jeffree Star and Morphe collab. You guys know, well, maybe you don't, but let's just say that Jeffree Star videos do very well on my channel. So at this point, I would almost be stupid to not review his stuff. People lie if they say they're on YouTube not to get views. I mean, look, we make videos, we put them out on the internet, of course we want people to watch them, you know? I feel like it only makes sense. So when I put up a video with something and I see it do really, really well, of course I want to continue with that because it means that people like the content that I'm putting out on my channel. And so because Jeffree Star content do so well on my channel, I decided to buy that palette, even though the color story really wasn't like all that special, you know? And the formula ended up being very so-so. I even did 10 looks with that palette. That video didn't necessarily do the best, so I think that I am just done with Morphe. Like, I don't know. On top of not liking Morphe's formula, even the Jeffree Star collab just didn't really do that well for me, so I kind of regret buying that palette because I didn't have the best time using it. It's not a terrible palette by any means, but it's also not one of those palettes that I'm ever going to reach for if I'm not filming, or if I want to have an excuse to film with something old. It's not going to be that one. It's just not. And speaking of Jeffree Star, I don't think I would have bought the Conspiracy Collection. I really don't think I would have bought the Shane Dawson collab palette if I wasn't on YouTube. I don't think the color story in that palette was all that great. And even though I've always liked Shane and I've always liked Jeffree Star's products, I just don't think I would have bought that one. Like, it just wasn't all that special to me. And even having it now, like, I'm not gonna sell it or anything. Like, I'm still, now at this point, I feel like it's part of, like, makeup history, and so like now it's kind of special to me. But if we're just talking about the quality of the eyeshadows and the color story in the palette, I don't think I would have bought it. Yeah, I just don't. I mean, both the Conspiracy palette and the Mini Controversy palette, the color stories in those palettes are just not really that great. And I could probably talk about the lipstick bundle as well, even though lipsticks is one of those things that I probably would have bought the same ones if I wasn't on YouTube as if I am on YouTube. I don't know, maybe not though. I would have to think about that for a bit. I know I bought the Blue Blood bundle with the lipsticks. I don't think I would have bought that if I wasn't on YouTube. But again, it's one of those things, like Jeffree Star lip swatching videos always do really good. So at this point, I'm like almost committed to buying most of them just because I know I'm gonna get my money back in ads anyway if I do buy them. Plus a lot of new people will find my channel. And when that happens, it just means that I get to introduce those people to new indie brands, and I feel like it's kind of like a win-win. Like, that's kind of, I feel like at this point, this is how I run my channel. I just use Jeffree Star to pull in people to like introduce to like fun brands, you know? So I feel like it's a win-win for everybody. So those were all of the palettes on my list that I bought just because I'm on YouTube. Are you surprised by any of them? Are there any other palettes that you feel like I should have added to my list maybe if you've been on my channel for a while and you've watched most of my videos? Maybe I've like missed a few. I feel like these are the ones that I've had on my list for a long time and that just makes sense to me. But maybe I've missed a few because I didn't go through like my whole collection looking through everything. If you have a channel and you've kind of done the same thing, I would love to hear your thoughts because I just find this to be very interesting how people on YouTube do different things than people who aren't on YouTube, and I feel like that just makes sense because YouTube is a platform, we all have goals, we all have to do what we feel is right to reach our goals, and that's just one of those things that we sometimes do for the views. We review stuff that we don't really love at first. So thank you for watching this video as always. If you want to see some other like chatty type videos, you can click on one of these. And if you're new, I would love it if you would consider subscribing, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.